What is up, maniacs? I am Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac, and I'm also a dumbass. I did my $555 draft, the one we're about to watch right now, and I had my mic on mute. So I am re-recording this with a voiceover, so you'll notice that my little talking head down in the left corner is not matching with what I'm saying right now. That's just because I'm having to do the voiceover, and I am not a very good video editor, so I don't know how to get that out of there. But what I do know is how to draft a $1 million lineup in this $555 buy-in. This is my one and only entry into this tournament. Roughly 10,000 players in this tournament. So to get to the first round, we'll be in a group of 12, and the top two teams make it to week 15. In week 15, you'll be facing 8 opponents. Top 2 teams from that group of 8 that week will advance to the following week. That is week 16. And week 16, we'll also be facing 8 people. If we win that round, we advance to week 17, where 52 other people will be competing for $1 million. If we make it to week 17, we be guaranteed $10,000. All right, so we are pick 10, I believe. Let's see if I can figure out how to scroll over. Struggling. There we go. We are pick 10. So in that range, if McCaffrey were to fall, I'd pretty much go in the order ADP with McCaffrey, Collins, Neighbors, Brown. So we'll see how it falls here. Jamar Chase goes 1, Bijan goes 2. That's pretty standard for where we're at now in drafts. Bijan, I got a lot of Bijan around the 6th spot earlier on in drafts. Was also getting a lot of CeeDee Lamb earlier too. So those are a couple of my higher roster guys, them and McCaffrey out of the first round. I got a good chunk of Jahmyr Gibbs earlier in the season as well. Really, who I'm low on in the first round are Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors. All those guys I'm a little underweight on, not by a ton. I don't want to fade anybody in that round, and don't necessarily want to fade those guys in particular. I just think the upside case for McCaffrey is so high. I have 14% McCaffrey, which is very high. 8% would be standard. So, yeah, I've been getting a lot of him and got a lot of him early too. I have a lot of McCaffrey around the turn, around this pick 10. Got him in the second round a couple times also. So he's gone here, though. We can't take McCaffrey. We'd definitely take Nico if he got here. If he doesn't, yeah, we'll see. Let's see what we got here. This comes down to Malik or Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is a $555 buy-in. If this was just another one of my Best Ball Mania drafts, I would have gone with Neighbors there because I'm a little low on him as far as how much I own. But I just feel so much better about the potential outcome of the Lions season compared to the Giants season. I just see a lot more scenarios in which you need to ride the Lions throughout the playoffs. I like their Week 17 matchup. I think there's a lot of scenarios in which Neighbors might be out at the end of the year. If they're out of contention and he's still dealing with that toe injury, I could see them shutting him down for the rest of the year to protect their asset. Obviously, there's a lot of unknown at quarterback there as well. So I just see more scenarios in which the Lions are in it, and I want to build a stack around the Lions. I also am a big fan of the Falcons. This year, I think that if Michael Penix goes off, which I think there is a good chance of, that they are one of the best teams in fantasy football and a playoff contender as we get down towards the end of the year. So I want to get pieces of them. So I like this initial start going with 2 teams that I think have really nice playoff runs. and solid week 17 matchups. So I'm going through here now, and I am queuing up all the players from that week 17 matchup in the Lions and Vikings game. And I'm also queuing up the Falcons and Rams game, which is the last game, the Sunday night game on week 17. Or I think it actually might be the Monday night game, but it's the last game of week 17. So a lot of money will be riding on that game. I think it'll be fun to, if we're in week 17, to be rooting for a guy like Drake London to have a huge week and have him vault us up the payout board and hopefully on our way to that $1 million. So just to get back a little bit to what I was talking about with Malik Neighbors and why I went Amon-Ra St. Brown over Malik Neighbors is I just think there's a better stack to be built with Amon-Ra St. Brown than there is with Malik Neighbors. Obviously, Malik Neighbors is a guy that could go off in week 17 and could also have a huge year. He's definitely a guy that has the potential to be wide receiver 1. But I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is just in a better situation. I think he'll be playing meaningful games down that playoff stretch. And the Lions last year were like, if you had a team stacked with Lions down the stretch, you were advancing week to week. I'll show here in a bit my correlation chart that shows just how successful the Lions were down the stretch last year. And I think they are in a position to do something similar this year as well. So I like building that stack. We'll try to get both Jameson Williams and Jared Goff, maybe mixing Laporta or David Montgomery, depending on how that falls. So yeah, stacking is very important, and I wanted to go with a first rounder that I could build a good stack around rather than just a player that is isolated, extremely talented, but in a bad situation. I think there's just too many outcomes where he is a bust, and in my $555 lineup, I don't want to take that risk of what I think is honestly a more likely outcome than him being wide receiver 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I feel very confident will be a top 5 wide receiver this year, and he will have plenty of boom games. Hopefully they are in the playoffs. I'm also queuing up 49ers and Buccaneers here. I think both teams have very attractive price stacks. And I also love the Tampa Bay Week 17 matchup. They play the Dolphins in Week 17. I think the Dolphins could have one of the worst secondaries in the league this year. I think there's a great chance that Baker is QB1 in Week 17. So I've been chasing a lot of Tampa Bay stacks. Obviously, they had a really good year last year. It is possible that they regress this year, but even if they do regress, I think it's more likely that Baker has a 35 touchdown season than a 25 touchdown season. And if he does that, those stacks will be very attractive. So we didn't get my boy Mike Evans there, but I like George Kittle here. Considered taking Devontae Adams to give us that game stack against Drake London in Week 17, but George Kittle, I just feel really good about being in that top 3 quarter or tight end mix at the end of the year. He was tight end 1 last year. Also, you got Juwan Jennings dealing with an injury / a contract situation. Ricky Pearsall seems to be the only healthy wide receiver there at the moment. So it feels like that offense for at least a good portion of the season is going to really be concentrated through Kittle, McCaffrey, and Ricky Pearsall. So we'll try to get Pearsall later, and then we could also have a nice stack with Purdy there as well. So we got 3 really solid stacks for teams that I think are going to be in contention in Week 17. I'm going to go ahead here and pull up JMO just because I like the chances of the Lions being the team that you need to be following and chasing in Week 17. And it gives us a really nice option of getting Jared Goff later and having Goff with his top 2 pass catchers. And if they get in shootouts, Goff is the type guy that can throw 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game, and he's not going to do anything on the ground. So when he has big games, he has players come along with him that have big games. Yes. And also, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams will kind of ping pong off each other. There's multiple times last year where they were both top 5 wide receivers. I'll go here and show that now in my correlation charting. So that's week 14. Week 15, Goff goes off. Amon-Ra St. Brown's wide receiver 2. Gibbs is running back 2. Sam Laporta's tight end 3. And then in the comeback in that game, they played the Bills. So Josh Allen was actually QB1 and James Cook was RB4. So you could have had 5 people come out of that game if you had stacked that week 15 game. So that's kind of the philosophy that we're going into this with. And then in week 16, you got Goff, Gibbs at wide receiver 7, J-Mo at wide receiver 4, which is interesting because the week before you had Jameson Williams, or you had Amon-Ra St. Brown as wide receiver 2. That's kind of that ping pong effect that I was talking about, where in week 15, Amon-Ra was the guy you needed. In week 16, Jameson Williams was the guy you needed. And if you have both of them, then you're really giving yourself a very good shot at having a top 5 or a top 10 guy each week, and sometimes they'll both be there. So that's why I want to chase stacks and teams that I think have solid playoff schedules. And when I say playoffs, I'm talking about weeks 15, 16, and 17. We're talking about the best ball playoffs. So I have all those schedules broken down, and I'm looking at the matchups for those weeks. I've actually created a little formula on how I rank teams' playoff schedules. And all 3 of these teams are teams that I really like their playoff schedule. I think that they have a good chance of being in a shootout. That's kind of what we're chasing, our stacks for shootouts. When a shootout occurs, obviously a lot of points are scored. In big scoring games that are 35, 31, those type games, a ton of fantasy points are scored. It's not uncommon for those shootout games when they go off for 6 or 7 guys from that one game to be top 5 at their position. So we're pursuing an outcome like that. We're trying to find a game like that where we can have all those players concentrated. And if that scenario plays out, which it happens almost week in and week out throughout the season, one game has, scores 55 plus points in it. In those games, there's a ton of fantasy production. So we're chasing that outcome, looking at likely scenarios in which that could occur, and then we're loading up with players from those teams. So we've got a good start with that here. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown's and J-Mo, Jameson Williams from the Lions, and then we got 2 other teams that we're going to stack with more players as we go later with the Falcons and the 49ers. So in our queue over here, you'll notice too, I went in and I queued up all the players from the teams, both that are teammates of the players I have so far, and then that are week 17 opponents for all these players. So we can build some of that game correlation that I was talking about, as well as get more of these stacks. So it doesn't mean that those are the only guys that I'm going to be picking in that range, but if it makes sense for the scenarios that I've been building out, like if it's likely that one or both of those people on the same team have huge weeks, if that team has a huge week, then I want to build that. So we're going to pursue Ricky Pearsall here to give us another big percentage of the San Francisco passing game. Another way to look at it is you're buying pieces of an offensive pie. If you can have 60% of the best fantasy offense in the league, you're giving yourself a very good chance of having the players that have the best fantasy production weeks in those scenarios. So that's why, and that happens throughout the year too. It's not just in the playoffs in week 17. If you have groups of players that are on good offenses, you have a high percentage of that team, pretty much week in and week out, you're going to have successful fantasy players because that offense is going to score a lot of points. If you have a lot of players from an offense that scores a lot of points consistently, you will have a good fantasy season, especially in best ball, where you don't have to try to pick which one of those guys is the guy to do it before it happens. You just have to have a collection of those players, and whoever it is, you're happy with because they hit your lineup. It doesn't really matter to you whether it's George Kittle or Ricky Pearsall in this case, or whether it's Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams. If only one of them has a big game, it doesn't matter which one it is because I have them. And there's going to be plenty of scenarios in which they both have big games. So stacking is just so important as I'm building my lineup. I'm worried a lot less about individual value of a player compared to the players around him in that draft. And I'm much more worried about how can I add another percentage of this offense to my team to give me the best chance of having that lineup that hits week in and week out, and most importantly, in week 17. Now here, we drafted James Conner. I felt like he's really the last workhorse running back in this range. The only other one that I think is in that range is Isaiah Pacheco. I'm not touching DeAndre Swift. I know he's going to be RB1 in that offense. I just don't think that lasts all year long. He does not have good vision. He's an explosive player, but he is just not a consistent runner of the football. Ben Johnson gets frustrated when guys don't do what they're coached to do, and he's a guy that constantly doesn't follow through on where the run was supposed to go or doesn't have the appropriate vision to see where the holes are that are designed for that offense, and that frustrates coaches. He has a lot of negative plays, and I can just see him losing more and more playing time as the year goes on. So he's a guy that I'm fading. I don't have much DeAndre Swift, but I didn't want to get out of that round without a running back. After James Conner, I think there's a cliff. Pacheco is somebody I would consider, but I don't think he's on the same level as James Conner. Biggest worry about Conner is his health throughout the year. If he plays such an aggressive style of football that he's commonly injured, he played 16 games last year. So we're rolling the dice that an aging running back is going to be there down the stretch. But if he is healthy, he is guaranteed volume. I just don't see him losing any touches at all this year. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and roll the dice on James Conner. We'll add a lot of more late season upside running backs as we go through this draft. But I didn't want to get to round 7 and not have a single running back. He was by far the best value at that range. He also plays the Bengals in week 17. Obviously, that's not a defense that we're afraid of, and could have a big game there in week 17. So like how this is building out. We got to start looking at where we want to get our quarterbacks at, start planning that out. So it's part of what I was looking on the board there. So we got a few other pieces that we can stack here. The name that jumps out to me that I really want are Jordan Addison. I just think in that Lions and Minnesota game, he is a guy that can go off. He is a guy that can have that big week. He had a wide receiver 1 week last year. He's had a ton of top 5 weeks. He's a guy that is going to get opened up in a lot of games because there's going to be such a focus on Justin Jefferson. And Jordan Addison is a very good receiver. Obviously, defenses have got to focus on Justin Jefferson because he's one of the best receivers in the league. And Addison gets favorable matchups because of that. And because of that, he ends up having quite a few solid games every year. He's more of a boom or bust player, but I'm totally okay with that in best ball. I definitely want to take shots at my core stack, their opponents, and a player that is one of those opponents that's a guy that can have boom games. That's exactly the type of guy that I want to target. If Sam Laporta fell here, we would also take him. That would just give us basically 90% of the passing offense in Detroit. So that's very attractive. If they get into a shootout game and a game in which they're not running the ball as much and Goff has to go off, I'm going to have a very good fantasy week with this team. So I like how that's building out. Laporta goes there, so that is not how it's going to play out for us on this one, but that's all right. So, yeah, we're really locked in on getting Addison here. He's the guy that I want. 2 more guys to go. One of our stacks just went. Tracy, not worried about him going. 1 more guy. Let's get Jordan Addison. And also, obviously, I know he's suspended for the first 3 weeks this season, but I shouldn't really need him at wide receiver in those first 3 weeks with my very strong wide receiver start, and I'm not worried. As long as I get to the playoffs, I could care less about the first 3 weeks. I understand that they're an element of adding points to get there, but I should have plenty of wide receiver points early in the season. That's not going to kill me. So we got Addison. Thankfully, he fell to us. So I would probably go Jordan Mason if he fell here, just because of how my roster is built out right now. I need a running back. But also, if I'm going to get all three of the quarterbacks I want, I would need to take Purdy here. He's not going to fall back to me. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take Purdy here to complete my stack with Pearsall and George Kittle. And then we'll get Goff with our next pick. So we got Purdy here. We'll go ahead and take him. So we're definitely going hero-ish RB with our hero needing to be James Conner. So a little bit risky at the running back position, but running back is a position that I feel comfortable with chasing later on in the draft. There's just a lot of guys that are handcuffs if some bell cow running backs get hurt, which is likely. We'll be in a position to have a good chunk of those guys that could be big values as the season goes on. There's some other timeshare guys in this range too that we can pursue, and they're going to have random weeks where they hit 12 points or they fall in the end zone or have a big play, get a few receptions. So we should be able to fill in at that RB2 spot as the season progresses pretty easily. I like Jordan Mason in this range. I like Zach Charbonnet in this range. I just haven't been getting a ton of them because I'm primarily taking quarterback in this range. This is where I start to complete my stacks. Most of the time I've got 2 or 3 quarterbacks that I'm pursuing in this range, so I need to take them with back-to-back picks in order to finish out my stacks with with my skill positions with the quarterback. So although I like Charbonnet and I love that Week 17 matchup he has against Carolina, it's just hard to get him when he doesn't fit the build of my teams very often in the range he's in. Honestly, if he was maybe even 10 picks earlier, I would probably get more of him than where he goes now, just because this round is almost always a quarterback for me. So if we really want to get Jared Goff with our next pick, that would be really nice to have Brock Purdy double stacked and Jared Goff double stacked with top end weapons with a lot of upside as well. Yeah, would love to complete that out. Yeah, we're just going back into my correlation charting. I pulled out every single week from last year and just wanted to get an idea of correlation with quarterbacks and wide receivers. When a quarterback goes off, how often do their wide receivers go off? Here you can see Sam Darnold was QB2 and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson were wide receiver 3 and 4, with Addison being higher ranked, which is it's showing exactly what I was saying. Like, Addison can have big weeks. Like, there's a wide receiver 3 week when he played the Lions last year. So that's the type of week that we want to be pursuing in that Week 17 when they face off, and hopefully makes us a ton of money. We would love to see a shootout in that game. If there's a shootout in Week 17, we've got a really good chance of having the winning lineup because we have guys that are likely to be those huge boom players in a big boom game. So yeah, we get Jared Goff right at ADP here, but it would be very surprising if anyone took him completely unstacked. He's a guy that it doesn't make sense to take unstacked because he has no rushing upside. If he has a big week, players that go with him are likely to have a big week. So you basically don't have a chance of winning if you have him unstacked, because if he goes off, it's very likely that you needed one of his teammates to go along with him to be competitive. So I just don't like taking pocket quarterbacks like Goff without multiple pieces of their passing game, because in a scenario in which his best case scenario happens, our team doesn't have a good build for that. Unfortunately, some moron takes Jared Goff here completely unstacked, ruining our plans. So now we got to figure out what we want to do for quarterback. So McCarthy, we have one piece with, and then we also have Michael Penix that we could take later. That there's one piece with. We could probably take McCarthy with one of these picks, and then, which we do, we take McCarthy here. I pulled him up a little early just because I didn't want to risk getting sniped again. Very unfortunate that we got sniped on Goff. Very disappointing. Would have loved to have that, but at least we have a skinny stack in that also has game correlation with McCarthy and Addison. We'll try to add some more Vikings pieces later on. And then here we're kind of in a weird range of we'll probably end up taking Loveland here just because that gives us game correlation against the 49ers. It also opens up another potential quarterback with being able to take Caleb Williams. He's right in this range as well. He might have already been taken, actually. But that gives us good game correlation. And then it also gives us two solid enough tight ends that we don't need to take any more tight ends. So we can do just a 2 tight end lineup here, which will allow us to get a few more running backs or one more running back, which will help us fill that RB2 spot that we have wide open right now. So we completed 2 of our stacks, not the one. We missed out on our primary stack that we wanted. Sometimes the draft just doesn't fall the way you want it to. That is a bummer, but still happy with how it's fallen so far. The Goff would have been really nice, but we still got Purdy with 2 teammates, 2 solid teammates. Looks like wide receiver 1 and tight end 1 for him. If they have the easiest schedule, strength of schedule for the year. So we'd like to get Mooney here. If he falls, that would finish a nice stack with Drake London, and then we could. It'd be very attractive to get Penix with the next pick after that. So if we could get any of the guys queued up here, that we have Pitts, Mooney, or Penix, I'd rather have Mooney than Pitts. That would give us a real nice stack with London. So we'll see how that plays out. But we do got Purdy with 2 good options, and we got McCarthy with Jordan Addison. So just showing playoff schedule here. This is Atlanta's. Atlanta has a nice run where they have Tampa, Arizona, and the Rams in Atlanta. Not any defenses you're scared of, and all in good weather conditions. The game totals actually ranks all the games summed up together from weeks 15 to 17 for them. They have the 5th best point total. Their team total is actually 25th best, but I think that's the odds makers are saying that they don't believe Atlanta is going to be good this year. There's a big question mark with Michael Penix at quarterback, so they're just lower on him. But in this scenario, I'm saying that they're much better. So if they are much better at this time of the year, those totals are going to go way up. So I really like their matchups throughout the playoffs and have been building a lot of Atlanta stacks. It would be a dream to get the Bijan and Drake stack. I have 2 of those lineups where I got them early on in best ball season. When Bijan was going much later, he was going around pick 6 early in the year. I had him fall to 8 one time, and then I got Drake. I think it was with pick 18. So that one was pretty sweet how that fell. And then I was able to get Mooney and Penix later too. So a real nice build if the Falcons are really good. So I've moved Penix ahead of Mooney just because I don't want to get sniped at quarterback again. I really don't have any other options that would be stacked nicely with this team if I don't get Penix. So I don't want to miss out on that. So I'm not going to risk him getting sniped like Goff got sniped, especially for this $555 build. I'm only doing one of these lineups. I'm not doing a full portfolio. If this was a Best Ball Mania draft, I might be a little more open to taking that gamble that I could get both Mooney and Penix. But in this one, I just don't want to be in a scenario where I don't have all three of my quarterbacks correlated to top passing options. So that is definitely what we're going to do. We're going to try to get Penix here to finish out the London and Penix stack, giving us 3 solid QB stacks. And then we can really just start chasing running back throughout the rest of the draft if we get that. Brian Robinson is still showing Washington on here, but he had already been traded at the time of the draft. And I was anticipating him to fall. I definitely had some interest since I have the 49ers. But yeah, I would take him more around like 140 in that range. So he's definitely a consideration here, but Penix is a pick. Mooney went, so we're not getting that super stack. Another one that's in consideration here is Luther Burden because he plays the 49ers in week 17. That would give us a double stack of game correlation with Colson Loveland and Luther Burden. So we're on the clock now. We got Brian Robinson. We're going to go ahead and take Penix here. That's our guy. We want to complete that QB stack. As I've mentioned, we don't want to miss out on that. So we will reach a little bit for him here and hope that Luther Burden gets to us. That's the guy that fits this lineup better. Gives us 2 comebacks against our solid 49ers stack. And I also think it's just a guy that is very skilled and is likely to be having a late season breakout as he gets more comfortable in the offense. He's just an explosive guy. I think Ben Johnson will find ways throughout the year to get the ball to him. Okay, Burden did get drafted though, so that didn't happen. Gonna go with Braylon Allen here over Brian Robinson. Actually, I just feel like Braylon Allen is going to get a lot more of the short yardage and goal line work. He's very young. Heck, we're looking at Brian Robinson here. I think he's just very mid, and I think the most likely outcome this season is that Christian McCaffrey is really good and is healthy throughout the year. So I don't think Brian Robinson is actually going to be much of a factor in San Francisco. Obviously, he's a high-end handcuff now, but even if he gets to work, I think Jordan Mason is a better player than him. So I don't even think Jordan Mason's production last year is the ceiling for Brian Robinson. So I'd rather go with Braylon Allen, who is younger, going into his second year, and in an offense that's going to run the ball a lot, where he's likely to get all the goal line work. And who knows if Breece Hall gets traded as the year goes, if they're not having success, they might try to turn him into some sort of value in draft picks because it doesn't sound like they're interested in re-signing him. He's a very talented player, so there would be a market for him. If he gets traded, then all of a sudden Braylon Allen walks into a position where he can get a lot of volume. Or Breece Hall got an injury. So a high-end handcuff as well as some week-to-week upside with his goal line work. Kind of gross for him to be our running back too, obviously. But like I said, I'm okay with chasing running back as we go in the draft rather than wide receiver. There's just a cliff. We've already gone past the wide receiver cliff. At this point, there's nobody that you feel confident in having consistent volume week to week when it comes to wide receivers. But there are guys that have plenty of upside at running back as we go through the later rounds of the draft. There's a lot of young guys that are behind superstars. And last year we had kind of an outlier season when it comes to running back health. We didn't have really any big injuries for bell cow running backs besides Christian McCaffrey last year. Most of the guys played throughout the year. And so we saw robust running back be a very successful build last year. If you took guys like Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, you took them early and often, Jonathan Taylor, all those guys, you had a good fantasy season. Derrick Henry, all of them performed towards their ceiling. I think that's an outlier type outcome season. And I think the more likely outcome is that we'll see a couple of those guys get banged up this year and miss significant time. And there's going to be guys late in this draft that are young and explosive that are all of a sudden be put into positions where they can get a ton of volume. So we're going to be chasing that outcome throughout the rest of the draft and put ourselves in a position, if those scenarios were to play out, where our team will get a lot better as the season progresses. All of a sudden, our weak spot at running back 2 could become a strength for us if the cards fall the right way. So that's the type of build I like to pursue. I talked about not really wanting to chase wide receiver down the stretch. There's not many guys as you go through this draft that if an injury happens in front of them, that they're likely to get a huge increase in volume. Like, there's guys that will get more volume, but not to the same level as running backs will. So these are much lower end likely bets at wide receiver than they are at running back to me at this point of the draft. So I'm happy to chase running back as we go through here. So looking at high-end handcuffs, Brian Robinson could be a guy I would take in this range. I'm going to go with Ray Davis, probably just get I got a good chunk of him, but if James Cook were to go down at any point, he would get a ton of volume. And then even if he doesn't, he's a guy that is going to be involved every single week in a very high-powered offense. He's a guy that, even without an injury, can hit my lineup quite a few times. I did take Brian Robinson off here. He is somebody I could definitely consider, especially with my 49ers stack. But I'd rather add Algier here. He just has more upside. I think he's guaranteed to get around 100 touches regardless of Bijan's health. And if Bijan were to go down, he becomes a guy that is all of a sudden, he's a top 15 running back, fantasy running back for sure. He's had a 1,000-yard season in the NFL. It just happened to be his rookie year, and then the next year they drafted Bijan Robinson. So it's not that he's not a capable runner. He very much is. He's just behind one of the best athletes, one of the best players in the league, and Bijan Robinson. He'll still get, I bet you even if Bijan's healthy throughout the year, that he's got 4 or 5 touchdowns. So there's plenty of scenarios where he hits our lineup early on in the season as that RB2. It can help us coast along to get to the playoffs. We're going to need some of these guys to have some weeks early in the season, but all 3 of our RB2s so far are guys that will get touches without injuries in the season. They're not going to get a ton of volume, but they're probably all going to hover around, 10 carries or so, somewhere in that ballpark. And you'd like to think that one of those 3 guys with 10 carries, gets around that 12 spot that would hit our lineup and get by where we're not missing out on points compared to our competition. And then our pass catchers are going off because that's where our studs are. We've got a lot of studs in the pass catcher realm. So we'll put ourselves in position to have some late season upside at running back and hope that our pass catchers can carry us until that happens and get us to the playoffs. If we get to the playoffs, which is a very dangerous team, I really like the hero RB build, or in this case, this is more of a 0 RB build. It's hard to call James Conner in that hero RB range. If he's healthy, I think he definitely plays that way, but he's just a bigger risk there. So this is more of a 0 RB build, which is kind of unique for me. If I was trying to go lower risk, 0 RB is a little bit higher risk, but it also has huge upside. For the $555 lineup, I would have preferred to go like a true hero RB build. But the way this fell, I still like it. We're just going to have to be aggressive with running back as we move through the rest of this draft. Some nice high-end handcuffs that are coming up here that I like. We got Rico Dowdle. Would be RB1 if Chuba went down. He'll also probably get touches pretty loud in the season. Will Shipley is one of the best handcuffs. Would love to get him. If Barkley were to go down or miss time, he'll be real solid. And I also think that there's weeks in which he'll get a lot of second half work. That happened in a lot of games last year. And now that Kenneth Gainwell is gone, he'll be RB2. He's got really nobody else in that backfield that's threatening. They had A.J. Dillon behind him, but they basically gave him no money, and he appears to be washed. So would love to get Will Shipley if he falls here. Go ahead. We're just queuing up guys that I'm targeting here. So if we're putting in a few receivers here, I like late season upside of Keandre Lumber-Smith. I love Jalen Coker. I have a ton of Jalen Coker. It sounded like they might trade Adam Thielen. That could open up a whole bunch of opportunity for Coker, and he could be one of the biggest steals of the draft, be one of the highest advanced rate players in best ball this year, which I'm very hopeful of because I think I have 20% Jalen Coker. So that would be a real nice one if that one hits for my best ball season. So going to try to get Rico Dowdle and Will Shipley here. If I could go back in time, I probably would have taken Will Shipley with that pick rather than Dowdle, but rolling the dice that I get both of them here. So, and we do not. Shipley goes. So in hindsight, I would have rather just have Shipley over Dowdle, but we'll go ahead and get Ollie Gordon here. He has a chance of being RB1 week 1. It does sound like Achane's going to play now with the calf injury, but it does sound like Jalen Wright's going to miss time. Gordon's been effective in the preseason. He was a dude that was an absolute stud at OSU. His junior year was one of the Heisman candidates going into the season in his senior year, and then just kind of had a dud of his senior year. But I do think he's a talented guy. I think if he came out after his junior year, that he likely would have been a second, maybe even a first round pick. But he fell this year. I think he was drafted in the 6th round. But he showed out well in preseason. He's a big guy. I think he has the chance of getting all of the goal line work regardless of whether or not Achane is healthy. And if Achane were to go down, he would walk into a lot of volume in an offense if Mike Daniels makes it through the year in an offense in which he's very creative with the run game and creates a lot of good run looks, even with that bad offensive line. So he's definitely a guy that I like taking in this range. Taj Brooks is one that I would definitely want to pursue. He is technically RB3 on the depth chart. Samaje Perine is RB2, but Samaje is just going to be like a third down guy, be in passing situations. He's not going to have any boom weeks. If Chase Brown were to go down, I think Taj Brooks takes the first and second down work. Like, I don't think Samaje's role changes. I think it's just Taj Brooks steps into primarily Chase Brown's role, and I like that. I like that scenario. If that plays out, Taj Brooks could be a best ball darling, be a guy that you need to have through the playoff run, and that would make this lineup super strong if a scenario like that were to fall, and everybody else is healthy. That also gives us a little game correlation with James Conner. They play the Bengals. The Bengals play the Cardinals in Week 17. So, yeah, definitely interested in Taj Brooks. Same thing with DJ Giddens. I think he has earned a clear RB2 role in Indianapolis. If Jonathan Taylor were to go down, he would be a absolute stud as well. So those are the guys I'll be targeting this range. Roschon has fallen a lot. He had an injury in camp, and there really hasn't been any news about it. Wouldn't mind getting Roschon with to get a little bit of a game correlation comeback against the 49ers. Add another piece there. But it's been kind of radio silence on him in camp. I do think that he'll likely get the goal line work and the short yardage work, but it might be Monungai, which is very interesting that his name really hasn't been mentioned at all by any of the coaches, even after his little foot injury. So don't know really where he's at, so he's fallen quite a bit. But for this lineup, I'd be willing to take a shot on him late to see how it falls. Brian Robinson did go off the board there. He fell quite a bit. I said earlier I'd take him around pick 150, but the more I thought about it, I just think his upside is so limited, even if McCaffrey were to go down. I already have a good chunk of Robinson as well. Like, I was taking him in a lot of Jaden Daniel lineups. Obviously, that game correlation is out the window now. Not the worst case, though, for that just to become like a premium handcuff. But I still think Garindo is like more explosive. And if they got in a situation where McCaffrey went down, I think Garindo is actually the guy that's more likely to come in and be a fantasy darling. Yeah, looking to see if there's anything knew about Roshan, but no, nothing even. His last update was August 7th, and they didn't even say anything in that. So he's an interesting one. Definitely want Taj Brooks here. He falls. T-Slaw is interesting here. I definitely would have taken him if I had Goff, but because I don't have Goff, I'm not going to pick him up. I'm so weak at wide receiver, at running back that I think I want to either add a running back here or add another piece to one of my quarterbacks. So I might go Naylor here to give me a double stack with McCarthy. It also kind of plays against that 3-game suspension for Addison. So it gives me like his replacement during that time frame. So I feel pretty good about that. He's a guy that scored 6 touchdowns last year too. So early in the year, when Addison was hurt, he performed pretty well. So because of that, I'm going to take him here. It gives me a nice run out for the first 3 weeks of the season. And then it gives me another guy that's a piece of one of my quarterbacks. So say McCarthy is QB1 in week 17. You'd more than likely Jefferson's a piece of that. But in scenarios in which he's not, and I think I'll show one here later where Addison scored 40 points and Jefferson wasn't even top 20. So that's definitely something that could play out. But you could also see in a game like that where Naylor might fall into the end zone. So yeah, look at this scenario here where we got Addison, wide receiver 3, going back trying to find where Addison was wide receiver 1. Here I'm showing a situation where I'm showing the Bengals in Baltimore game in week 10 where you had 4 top 5 guys for the Bengals and 3 top 5 guys for the Ravens. And one of those was Tylan Wallace. So he was wide receiver 5. That's kind of what I'm looking for in Naylor is there's a shot that maybe he is that random Tylan Wallace week in week 17. I like to have my late round wide receivers always be stacked to quarterbacks because it gives you a better shot at that random dude going off and being needed. If he goes with a quarterback that's QB1 and you're attached to that quarterback, you just give yourself a better chance of a random guy's going off like that. When a quarterback throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, those are the type of games where a random dude does end up with 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? Like that. That's why I like adding my late round wide receivers to a quarterback, because if that best case scenario for my quarterback that I need to win the whole thing happens, then there's a decent chance that random guy that's at the end of my bench hits as well. So that's why I like to stack late with my wide receivers. Running back, I'm not really worried about stacking at this range. I'm more just looking for volume opportunity or upside. So either upside from a skill set standpoint or upside from an opportunity standpoint. If an injury were to occur or someone's play drops, are these guys in a position where they can walk into a high volume situation? High volume leads to fantasy points. So we're looking for potential opportunities that could occur where we get that volume. Primarily, these ones are going to be more based on injury. Where if we could actually get Roshan and Monangai here, that would be a pretty nice run out for us, because we're pretty much guaranteeing ourselves the goal line running back for the Bears. So I think there's a good chance that there's 8 to 10 touchdowns for that role. And even if it's split between them throughout the year, that's a guy that is going to hit our RB2 spot quite a bit. So we're going to pursue that, see if we can make it happen here. Still in play. We got 2 more to go. Roshan's dropping pretty dramatically. This would be 23 picks past his ADP. So that'd be some nice value. Again, he's falling because there hasn't been anything mentioned about him in training camp, and we haven't got to see him play in the preseason. So we're just not sure what his role is, if he's healthy. We just don't know anything. It was assumed that he was RB2 going into the season. But if I can get both these guys here, I like how that plays out. That would give me a 6 wide receiver lineup, but 5 of those guys are really solid, and then I have a nice additional stack with my quarterback. Now I would be getting 2 game stack here. Nice, it fell. The first part fell, so we got Roshan. Gonna look, just make sure we don't know anything about Monangai, but it didn't sound like it was anything serious. So Go ahead and take Rashawn here and then hope with our last pick that we get Manungai and it give us 3 players against the 49ers in week 17. I like the potential of that. I like that potential a lot, actually. So it's looking like we're going to get it. Nice. It fell to us. So we get Manungai here. We get two pieces of that Bears backfield, but I think the reality is we're like guaranteeing ourselves the goal line role in that offense. So I like how that fell quite a bit. So went 9 running backs here, which normally I'm not going to go more than 7, but because we went 0 RB, I'm going to add more volume there to give us more shots at hitting the guy we need. But we got a lot of high-end handcuffs here. If there are injury to Breece Hall, to DeAndre Swift, to James Cook. Who else did we get? Oh, to Devon Achane, to Chase Brown. Any of those guys, we're in a really good spot at our RB2. Right now it looks really ugly, but we've got a lot of guys that have upside. Oh, also Tyler Algier. So if Bijan were to go down, we all of a sudden have an RB1. So it's a risky build, but it's a build that has a lot of different scenarios in which it can be a winner, a lot of different outcomes. We're not just dependent on one potential injury. We have a lot of shots with guys with upside and skill that genuinely could earn time, or they could get time based on an injury that happens in front of them. So I'm going to pull up the graphic of the team here, just do a quick synopsis as this loads. But like how it's fallen. The biggest bummer of the draft is that we didn't get Jared Goff to go with our elite stack of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. But we did get a nice game correlation stack on the comeback there with Jordan Addison, not Justin Jefferson, unfortunately. That'd be really nice, but basically impossible. I don't think there'll be any Amon-Ra and Justin Jefferson lineups because of where they are in drafts. It's impossible to get them on the same team. So, but we got Addison, who's a guy that can definitely be wide receiver 1. And we got McCarthy, his quarterback. And then we have a late stack addition in Jalen Naylor.